Hello YouTube, this is Marauders here, and today I just want to talk about a very special feature of Windows 10. So in Windows 10, one of the features that you can do is that you can make extra instances of, you can make new installations of Windows 10 boot from a VHDX file, which is a virtual hard disk file, instead of having to like create multiple installation of Windows by installing it into different partitions or different disks or whatever. So previously, when you try to install a new instance of Windows, you're gonna have to like format a new hard disk or make a new partition and move things around, and it gets basically gets very complicated. But with this new, actually it's not even a new feature, it's been around since I think it was around since Windows 7, but it's not very widely known. So once you're able to install and boot Windows from a VHDX file, it makes it very simple to just have multiple installation of Windows. So you might be wondering, why would I need multiple installation of Windows? Well, a normal person wouldn't need it, but for developers or professionals, there might be many reasons to do that. Maybe you want to install some different version of Windows, or maybe like when you go to a client like that. This is a very close example to me because I experienced it myself. Now, if you go to a client and you need to connect your laptop to the client's network, they'll tell you like, oh, we have some security restrictions, so they want you to install some security software on your Windows, which you really don't want that to do it on your personal laptop, because yeah, it just gets a bit tricky. Either you get performance degradation and a lot of other issues. So if you are able to install a new instance of Windows, and when you go to the client, you boot into that instance of Windows, the problem is solved, because when you're back home, you just boot back into your normal installation of Windows and do what you want without any problems. Now, one step above from this install Windows on a VHDX file is that you can also make Windows boot off a VHDX file that is contained inside a USB drive. And just in case you all are having the wrong idea, when I say USB drive, I'm not referring to something like this USB, like this small USB thumb drive, even though you could do it, but I really don't think you should, because yeah, I don't think this thing can take the read-write cycles. I'm more talking about an actual USB hard drive, okay? And more specifically, I'm talking about something like this. So inside this thing is an NVMe SSD drive. So it's a solid state drive, just like what they use in your modern notebooks and your PCs. And this isn't just a normal USB case. This enclosure supports USB 3.1 Gen 2. So, well, the product specification says this thing has a theoretical maximum speed of 10 gigabits per second. I don't know whether that is fast or not. One thing I do know is when I run Windows off something like this off my USB-C port, which is a 3.1 Gen 2 port, yeah, I don't really feel much different between this and my internal SSD. So this makes it really convenient, because you can really just install Windows onto something external, especially if you can't upgrade your internal drive. You can just plug it in and you have another instance of Windows running off of it. Of course, the issue is that I hope your USB port is properly powered, because you don't want this to lose power to this thing when you're running Windows. Okay? And one more thing is, Look how cool these things look. I mean, I bought this enclosure just because it looks cool. I bought this just because it looks cool. I have a problem. Okay, let's see how to go about getting Windows to boot off these things. Okay, so let's begin. So the first thing which we want to do is that we want to create the VHDX file to hold our information. So just start up a PowerShell or command prompt in admin mode. So you must use admin mode because, well, we're gonna do admin things, and yeah, a normal mode won't help us. So we're gonna use this part and to start creating the disk. So once you're in the disk part file, we're gonna say create vdisk file is equal to. So we need to say where we want to put the VHDX. So I have a VHDX folder. I'm going to call the file boot2.vhdx. Now remember, it's important that you must give the extension must be VHDX, okay? It must be it. Okay, so we're going to say what is the maximum file size. Now take note, don't try to make an exact VHDX that's the exact same size as your USB device or whatever you want to put it on, because there's going to be a lot of leeway and other things. So for example, if you're going to put it on something that says it's a 256 gig hard disk, you check your Explorer, you probably don't have the full 256 gigabytes. So what you want to do is, on a 256 gigabyte drive, you might just want to do a 200 gigabyte VHDX. So this maximum size is in megabytes, so 200 gig will be 200 and an additional 3 zeros at the back. Okay, but since we're just doing a demo now, I'm just going to make a simple 20 gig VHDX. And here's the important part: you must specify it as fixed, because even if you don't specify as fixed, whenever Windows boot, it will take the time to grow the file. So you must specify it as fixed, or you're going to waste a lot of time during startup. Okay, so we're going to create the file. It's going to take a while because remember, we asked to do a fixed size VHDX. So it's going to make a file that is as big as what we specified to begin with. Okay, so now the VHDX has been created, and we can now see the file. We can now see the file in our folder. So you have like a 20 gig file. That's what I made. Okay, so now that the VHDX has been made, the next command to run is to attach this to the system, and then we are going to create the primary partition to hold information, and we're just going to say format. We're just going to format it, and then we're just going to call it our boot VHDX. Okay. So again, that will format it, and we are just going to assign a drive letter, and we'll call it V. Okay, so now the VHDX will have been mounted onto our system. So let's exit this part right now. So the next thing we're going to do is that we are going to put Windows 10 onto our VHDX. So double click on the ISO file of Windows 10 that you've maybe downloaded off MSDN subscription or your data recovery image or something. Okay, so we're gonna just double click on ISO. When you double click on the ISO file, Windows 10 will mount it as a DVD drive. So we can see a drive here, and we're gonna go inside. If we go inside sources, we would find, let's just sort by size. So you find a file called install.wim. So this is where the install images are located for Windows 10. Now, if the disk that you got has a install.exe ESD instead of Vim, you're going to have to run some extra commands to extract the Vim from the ESD. So just, well, find those commands on the internet and follow back here, okay? Once you got the Vim from the ESD. Okay, so now that we have found our install.vim, we're gonna go back to our command prompt, and then we are going to get some information out from that Vim file. So we'll say dism slash get Vim info slash Vim file is :e slash sources slash install.vim. So this will list out the available images that are inside that Vim file. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to be aware of the index of the version of Windows, the edition of Windows that you want to install. For example, I want to install Windows 10 Pro. Okay, so index will be 6. Actually it's 15 gigs, so I only have a 20 gig VHDX. So yeah, it's gonna be a bit tight, but well, it's just a demo. Okay, so we're gonna use index 6 here. Okay, so now that we know which index we want, we're going to say dism slash apply image. Okay, and then the Vim file again, :slash Vim file is :slash sources slash install.vim, and then we're going to say we want to use index 6, and then we're gonna apply directory. So remember, we mounted the VHDX in V, so we're gonna say v:/. So basically we're gonna say take the image from install.vim index 6 and apply it onto the root of our VHDX, so v:/. Okay, so we're gonna go enter, and it fails again. That in parameters is wrong, so let me just see what did I get wrong. Apply image Vim file : install.vim, apply direct, apply dir. Okay, so okay, now remember I got it wrong. It should be in Vim file, it's image file. Yeah, image file, not Vim file. Okay, so I just spelled the parameter wrongly. So dism apply image file is the Vim index, and apply directory is v:/. Okay, let's go. And it's going to take a while to decompress the image onto the VHDX. So you can see it's going to apply our installation onto the VHDX. Okay, so now that it has finished applying the image, we can see that in our V drive, you can see there's definitely an installation of Windows in our VHDX already. Okay, now we can start doing the super dangerous part, which is we are now going to edit the boot entry of our computer. Okay, this is super dangerous. Okay, if you do this wrong, your computer will fail to boot. So be very careful on doing this. Okay, well, don't come to me if anything blows up. Okay, so we're gonna use BCDEDIT. So this is what we use to do our boot configuration. And what's interesting to note here is that we have this Windows bootloader here, identifier current. So this is actually your current default Windows boot image. So basically, it's just gonna say, yeah, we're gonna use C to boot, and the OS is in C. Okay, so we're gonna just take a copy of that. So BCDEDIT /copy, and Now we're gonna just say current, because remember the identifier here is current, and because I'm in PowerShell, I have to put quotation marks beside it. And then we're just gonna call this our VHDX boot. Okay. So you say the entry was successfully copied to this new value. So we are going to copy this identifier. Remember not to take the full stop. And if we just run BCDEDIT again, we can see that we now have a new entry. One says current and one is that new identifier that we have. So this is going to be actually quite easy because we have already mounted our VHD into V drive. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to say for this identifier, the device and the OS device, we're going to point the partition to V. Okay, so it's actually very simple. BCDEDIT / set the identifier. Oops, I forgot. I'm in PowerShell. So device is equal to partition is going to be equal to V colon, and then we're going to set OS device partition is equal to V colon as well. Okay, so now we will double confirm that sure enough, for this new entry, we now have partition is V and OS device partition is V. And if we say BCDEDIT and ask it to show in details instead of the hidden values, so that we can do a /V, and you can see that the VHD for the entry that we want, the device is actually VHD, where our VHDX is. Okay, so yeah, it's actually everything looks great. It will boot. Our VHD boot will show up in our Windows boot menu. Okay, so now it's time to restart the PC and see what happens. Okay, so now when you restart your PC, after we've already added a new entry into your boot configuration, you can see that we have two entries here. One is the original Windows 10 and one is our VHDX boot, which is what we called our boot entry just now. So okay, we are just going to select that and go into that configuration. So once we selected the VHDX boot, Windows will just boot up again. Remember that this is basically a fresh installation of Windows and it needs to just go through all the installation steps again. Okay, so we're gonna have to run through the entire Windows setup. Just a note of advice. So you can say like, okay, the reason why we are coming in here is to test to see whether our VHDX was installed correctly before we move it into our USB drive. Don't do this halfway and skip, because my experience is I tried to do it halfway before and I skipped it, and yeah, Windows got a bit confused and it got stuck in a situation where I had to just fully reinstall Windows and go through this again. Okay, so just finish the setup, boot again, and just boot completely and properly into Windows 10 before you continue with the next step, where we're gonna just copy and get our USB drive ready for boot. Okay, so now that we have our VHDX ready, we will now want to get our USB drive ready to be so that you can boot into it. So first thing is you want to go into Windows and you want to look at the GUI version of the disk management tool. And what you want to do is you want to identify which is your USB drive. So in this case here, we see that 0 is my D, 1 is my C, and you can see that this 2 is my USB drive. Okay, so it would have been confusing to just use this part to see it, because both my boot drive and the USB drive is basically has the same space. Okay, so we identified that this 2 is our USB drive. Now we can go back into our terminal. Again, remember, you must have an admin terminal screen. I'm going to run this part again. So we can list out this. You can see we have so many. So we'll select disk 2, which is our USB drive. And then we will say clean. Remember, this is dangerous. When you run this command, all the partitions will be removed. So that's why you need to make sure you are you're operating on the correct disk. Okay, so now it's clean. Convert GPT to change it into GPT format. Okay, so you can see that this 2 is selected. We're now operating on this 2. Okay, so we're gonna first create a partition, an EFI partition. So this will be 100 meg. Then we are going to format this into FAT32. Then we just call it system. Okay, then we're just gonna assign this drive letter to S. Okay, now we're gonna create a partition. This is going to be one of their recovery data partitions. MSR size go to 128. And then we're gonna create our primary partition. Which should just pick up all the rest of the space. And this one will format it into NTFS so that it will support the large file size of our VHDX. We'll just call it VHD store, VHDBOOT, boot data. Call it out VHDBOOT data. Then we will assign, let's say, we will just assign the letter as V again. Oh no, wait, this isn't the VHD, so we're gonna assign this into our physical disk. So let's call it M. Okay, so now our VHD disk is ready. Now our VHD disk is ready. We have our boot from our boot system from the USB drive, and we have our M drive, which is where we're gonna take the VHDX which we made previously. Copy it. And then I'm going to I'll just make a folder. Call it VHD. Paste our VHD into the drive. Okay, so now after we've copied the VHDX file into the USB drive, we're gonna go back to our command prompt. We're gonna run this part again. Then we're going to mount our VHD. So just now we copied it to VHDX/boot2.vhdx. I'm gonna attach the disk to our drive. Okay, we'll just confirm that the So here we have our boot VHD again. So it's already mounted. And now we exit out. Okay, so we are going to enter the VHD drive. And then we will go into the VHD's own System32 folder. Remember, you will be in the VHD System32 folder. And we're going to say BCDBOOT from Windows itself. We are going to apply it to the S drive, which is the source partition on our USB drive. So we're going to take the files from our VHD's window. We're going to apply it to the USB drive. And we're going to apply it as a UEFI format. So now, if you have any reason, this parameter could be BIOS or UEFI or both. For modern computers, it will be, and I only really tried with UEFI boot methods. I really don't know how well it works for BIOS. It should be just to change it to /F BIOS. But for my computer, I know I need to call it as UEFI. Now, UEFI is used by all the newer laptops from the recent years, so it shouldn't be wrong for you to use UEFI. Okay, so now the boot files has been pushed in. So what we can do is we can actually see it if I go into the S drive and we enter this EFI folder. I can go into Microsoft and we can go into boot. And you can see there's a BCD file here. So that's basically the boot file. I can actually go BCDEDIT as, but I'll just specify that the store is this BCD file. And we can see that this bootloader is pointing to V. So yeah, this is the boot configuration of our USB drive. So what we can do is we can now attempt to boot it into our USB. Okay, so now is one of the more trickier parts of what we are trying to do here. Okay, we need to make your computer boot into the USB drive that's attached to the USB port. Now, this procedure will vary machine from computer to computer. Some computers might only boot from certain USB ports. Some computers might not be set up to show a boot menu to boot from USB drives. It's really subjective. So you need to see your computer or laptop documentation on exactly how to boot from the USB drive. Okay? Like on my PC right now, what I've already set it up. So all I have to do is hammer the F12 key when the computer boots up and it will show the boot menu. So we turn it on and I'm just gonna start hammering the key now, F12. Yep, hammer, 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 hammer. Hammer, 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 yep, okay. So you can see this is my boot menu here. So again, this is different based on PC to PC. Some PC will just say external USB. But for this particular PC, for this motherboard, I realized that I can actually see the boot manager. So if I set boot into the USB drive, it actually fails. But so I have to boot into the Windows boot manager on the USB drive. So again, it really depends on your system. I really can't tell which will work for you. You need to test it and see. As you can see, it's basically booting the stick user that we made in the USB system just now. So yeah, this is running off from the USB drive. This is great. So And there you go. You now have a Windows that is booting from a USB drive. I really hope you find great and interesting ways to use this, because this is a really good way to do testing and some other debugging when you need to. Unfortunately, I can't tell you if this is a good idea to easily move Windows installations across machines, because I'm pretty sure eventually Windows will get tired of having to reinitialize drivers every time it boots. Okay, so this is Marauders, and thanks for watching.